All right. How's everybody doing? Hey, this is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show on 9:10 AM the Superstation, the voice of Detroit. So some of you all saw the broadcast that we did a couple hours ago, the African History Network show. And we had callers who called in at the end of the show. There were callers I did not get a chance to get to. We had a lot of callers tonight. We dealt with 4 or 5 different topics. So I wanted to come on tonight for Facebook Live and do a questions and answers session. So if you were listening to the show, if you were watching on Facebook, and maybe you posted a question or a comment that I did not get a chance to get to, or maybe if you called into the show or wanted to call into the show and did not get a chance to do that, here's your opportunity now. Okay. All right. So on tonight's show, what we dealt with, we know that Saturday, August 19th, legendary Dick Gregory passed away. He suffered from a bacterial infection. So we talked about that last week, Sunday, and dealt with his career and his civil rights activism, things like that. Tonight, I talked about how back in 1968, when Dick Gregory was running for president as a write-in candidate, he was targeted by J. Edgar Hoover, director of the FBI, who conspired with the Mafia to kill Dick Gregory. Back in 1968, J. Edgar Hoover, director of the FBI at the time, conspired with the Mafia to kill Dick Gregory. He saw Dick Gregory as a threat. Dick Gregory was going around the country running for president, calling out the government, calling out corruption, calling out FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover as well. And he felt that he was really a threat because he had a following as a comedian. And, Dick Gregory said that, quote, "I feel that the two-party system is obsolete. The two-party system is so corrupt and immoral, they cannot solve the problems confronting the masses of the people in this country." Dick Gregory also called out the FBI director and President Lyndon Johnson as well. The documents surrounding the attempt to kill Dick Gregory were not released until 10 years later in 1978. Okay. So Washington Post has an article. J. Edgar Hoover saw Dick Gregory as a threat, so he could he schemed to have the Mafia neutralize the comic. J. Edgar Hoover saw Dick Gregory as a threat, so he schemed to have the Mafia neutralize the comic. Okay, so we talked about that, and then also we continued our discussion dealing with how protests surrounding the Confederate monuments that are throughout the country, especially in the South, how these protests have spread across the country, and how they've also spread to statues of or monuments of Christopher Columbus, as we see here in Detroit and in Baltimore. Roger B. Taney, who was the Chief Supreme Court Justice, who wrote the Dred Scott decision in 1857. It spread to, the protests has spread to a statue of J. Marion Sims. J. Marion Sims, who's known as the father of modern gynecology, who conducted horrific experiments on enslaved African female women and did surgeries on them without anesthesia, did surgeries on their genitalia, things like this. J. Marion Sims, known as the father of modern gynecology. We see protests against all these symbols across the country. Okay. And the next step is to correct the educational curriculum. The next step is to correct the educational curriculum. All right. So we talked about that as well. We broadcasted the show on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network, the African History Network. So you can go back. The show is in 4 segments. So you can go back and watch that also if you missed it. Okay. We talked some about the documentary that I'm in that just came out this past week, Elementary Genocide Part 3, Academic Holocaust. Elementary Genocide Part 3, Academic Holocaust. I just posted the link there. We have a bundle pack for the documentary. You could purchase that, and you could purchase it. You can purchase Elementary Genocide 1, 2, and 3, and you get 3 of my DVD presentations free. And then also you can purchase it by itself at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. And I'm in the documentary Professor Kaba Kamene, formerly known as Booker T. Coleman, Professor James Small, Dr. Boyce Watkins, Scheherazade Ali. Excellent documentary just came out. We also dealt with Christopher Columbus, because when you have these statues of Christopher Columbus, right, it's important to understand, number one, Columbus did not discover America. And, you know, many of our children are still taught today that Columbus discovered America. Well, there are few reasons why that's not true. And people say, well, how can you discover somewhere where there were already people there? Well, that's true. I'll give you that. That's true. But when we say Columbus discovered America, the number one reason why Columbus did not discover the land that we call the United States of America is that Columbus never came to the land we call the United States of America. The number one reason why Columbus did not discover the land that we call the United States of America is because Columbus never came to the land we call the United States of America. The closest he came here was Cuba, which is 90 miles away. Okay, the closest he came here was Cuba, which is 90 miles away. So in my presentations and the online course that I teach, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school, different things like this, I show you where he went on his 4 voyages. He never came here to the land we call the United States of America. But we know that Columbus helped to lay the foundation for slavery, racism, capitalism, the exploitation of indigenous people, with him discovering the so-called New World, the Caribbean, Central America, and part of South America. He's in Haiti, Jamaica, the Bahamas, Cuba, Puerto Rico, Honduras, places like this, Panama. Okay. And what they're going to do is enslave the indigenous population, because there were the other thing is at least 70% of the people Columbus encountered on his 4 voyages were African people. There were already African people in those areas. Now, it is true that starting in 1501, they're going to start taking in African people into those areas also. And then they're going to exclusively enslave African people about 1518. Okay, in the Spanish territories. But there were already African people in many of those areas that Columbus goes into also. And he first set sail on the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria August 3rd, 1492. Okay, so earlier this month, August 3rd, was the anniversary of Columbus setting sail on his first of 4 voyages. So then we see in Georgia, we see the debate over Stone Mountain, the reliefs, the carving into the side of Stone Mountain, which is a huge mountain. And in Georgia, they've turned that into an amusement park. I was just there filming the Black Friday documentary, Black Friday Part 2, the African Global Legacy, or the Global Legacy. I was there 3rd weekend in July, 2017. Filming my portion of the documentary. We're at the top of Stone Mountain. And when you get to the top of the mountain, they have a gift shop there, souvenir shop, things like this, right? And see, on Stone Mountain, they have on the side of the mountain, they have a carving of General Robert E. Lee, Colonel Stonewall Jackson, and Jefferson Davis. Well, these were all Confederate officers. They all fought in the Confederate War, and they fought to keep slavery intact. They fought to keep African people enslaved. And at least two of them that I know of, Colonel Stonewall Jackson and General Robert E. Lee, those two owned slaves. I'm not sure about Jefferson Davis. Wouldn't be surprised. I don't know for certain about Jefferson Davis, but Stonewall Jackson and Robert E. Lee, I've researched them, so I know for certain they own slaves. So AtlantaBlackStar.com has an article about this. Stone Mountain poses arguably the supreme test for the Confederate symbols debate. Stone Mountain poses arguably the supreme test for the Confederate symbols debate. And I don't know if y'all can see this, but we'll look at the article. If you look at the article, but this is a picture of the carving here. This is a picture of the carving. And they have these three men on a horse. This is something big in Georgia. Because when you go to the souvenir shop, they have hats with this carving on it. They have hats and mugs and keychains and T-shirts, all this stuff celebrating Stone Mountain. Well, you're celebrating the Confederacy. You're celebrating white supremacists who fought to keep slavery as a system. They succeeded from the Union, picked up arms against the Union, committed a treasonous act, and fought to keep slavery in existence, to keep our ancestors enslaved. So now you have a debate over what to do with this. The images carved into the mountain, quote, like Confederate monuments across the state, stand as constant reminders of racism, intolerance, and division, says Stacey Abrams, who is, Stacey Abrams is running for, she is a Democratic candidate for governor, okay, in the state of Virginia. And she said the carving should be removed. But the removal probably would mean destroying a work of public art that took decades to complete and is the centerpiece of one of Georgia's biggest tourist destinations. This is huge. Now, this was my first time at Stone Mountain. Okay, but this is an amusement park. They have all types of rides there, things like this. This is an amusement park, Stone Mountain. And it took decades to complete this carving, because this is similar to Mount Rushmore. The carving is similar to Mount Rushmore. Gazing up at the carving with out-of-town guests, Leela Finn and Sandra Noose, white women from nearby Avondale Estates, said they visit Stone Mountain for the hiking trails and other amenities. They see the carving as a curiosity. Check out this article, because people will go up and down. You can climb up the mountain. It's steep, but you can walk up the mountain. So people use that for exercise, some and things like this, right? Or you could take the cable car up and down. So now you have this debate in Georgia over, well, what do we do with this? This is a huge tourist attraction. You know, they make a lot of money off of this. Those who want Confederate symbols removed often say they belong in a museum where there's explanation and context not prominently displayed on public lands. The Stone Mountain Memorial Association, which manages Stone Mountain Park, argues the park serves precisely that purpose. Not exactly sure how. That stuff the statues belong in a museum, not in an amusement park. No, not an amusement park. You might as well have a Ku Klux Klan park. No, they belong in a museum. And I tell you, people going to the amusement park, they weren't going there to go to a museum, because they're riding the rides and doing all types of stuff like that. No, that memorabilia, those statues, monuments, they belong in a actual museum. So check out that article. That's something else that we talked about on tonight's show. If you have a question, go ahead and post your questions. I want to do this Q&A session. Somebody asked a question, where did the name America originate? Was it Vespucci? No. The name America comes from the Los Amarisques. The Los Amarisques, or Amérique, were a group of black African people in the land today we call Nicaragua. In the book Fulcrums of Change, Fulcrum, Fulcrums of Change by Jan Carew, Jancarew, by Jan Carew. Jan Carew deals with the etymological derivation and the whole history behind the origin of the word America. First of all, Vespucci's first name was not Amerigo, it was Aberigo, Aberigo. When you study him, you'll see different variations of his name. His original name was Aberigo Vespucci, Aberigo, Aberigo Vespucci, not Amerigo. He takes the name Amerigo, Amerigo, after he comes in contact with this group of black African people in what today we call Nicaragua, who named themselves after a nearby mountain. The name of the mountain was Sierra Amarique. And they call themselves Los Amarisques, okay, after this mountain. He comes in contact with them and he changes his name from Aberigo to Amerigo, Amerigo. And then the word Amerigo is Latinized with the Latin suffix C, A, Ka, which denotes land. So really, America really means land of the Ameri. That's basically what it translates as. The Ameri referring to the Los Amarisques. Okay. Read Fulcrums of Change, pages 91 through 105 by Jan Carew. And I interviewed Professor Kaba Kamene, one of my teachers, about this, because that's who I found. I heard things about this before, but he's the one who actually provided me with the information, because he sent me the pages of the book, and I went and read it, and I interviewed him about this February 3rd, 2016. So if you go to AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, we have almost 800 podcasted episodes of our shows there. You go to AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, and on the podcast, search for origins of the word America. Origin of the word America. You can listen to that podcast from February 3rd, 2016. We go deep into it. Okay. So when I know a lot of people like to say we're not Americans. Oh, yes, we are. African people are the original Americans. And then when you study the work, and I deal with this in my online course that I teach, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. When you study the work from people like Dr. David Imhotep, who wrote the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence, you'll see that African people were in the land we call the United States of America. We've been here at least 51,700 years. We were here before Native Americans came into existence. We don't understand our history. Okay. We were here before Native Americans even came into existence. So the Khoisan have the oldest DNA on the planet, and the Khoisan go all around the world, and the Khoisan were here. And in 2004, Allendale County, South Carolina, Dr. Albert Goodyear, who's an archaeologist from the University of South Carolina, he made a discovery, and Dr. David Imhotep deals with this in his book, and they cite 13 different disciplines thoroughly documenting an African presence in this country going back at least 51,700 years ago. This is before Native Americans come into existence. So not only are African people the original people of South America, Central America, and North America, specifically the land we call the United States of America, not only are we the original people of this land, but even the word America has an African origin referring to African people. And then if you look at the 1828 Noah Webster Dictionary, which is online, you can Google it, 1828 Noah Webster Dictionary, and you search for the word American, it clearly tells you that the term American, American, originally referred to the Aboriginal or copper-colored people that Europeans found in the Americas when they went into the Americas. It tells you that that term American originally referred to the Aboriginal or copper-colored people, which means that the term American did not originally refer to Europeans, which means that the original Americans were indigenous African people and Native Americans. The term American did not originally refer to Europeans. So not only are African people the original Americans, but even the term America has an African origin. And you have some Europeans that know this. So I know Malcolm's one of my heroes. You see the picture of Malcolm behind me. I know Malcolm said, I'm not an American. You know, I'm one of the 22 victims of America. No, we are Americans. We are the original Americans. Now, I'm not saying the transatlantic slave trade didn't happen. You have to understand the chronology of history. But there were more African people who were already here in the land we call the United States of America before the transatlantic slave trade starts. Before 1440, when the transatlantic slave trade starts, before the 1520s, when the Spanish are bringing African people into the land we call South Carolina, because Africans were being enslaved and taken to the land we call South Carolina about 100 years before Jamestown, Virginia, August 20th, 1619. But there were more African people already here than those brought here during the transatlantic slave trade, because you're going to have on the low end 388,000 to 1.4 million that were brought here in this land we call the United States of America during the transatlantic slave trade. So we have to understand the chronology of history and the chronology of migrations, voluntary or forced. So this is why my approach dealing with history and dealing with the transatlantic slave trade is different than a lot of people, because I deal with the chronology of history. Going back at least 50,000 years. I deal with a chronology of history. I don't deal with it episodically. I deal with it chronologically. You have to understand how a sequence of historical events lead up to a larger event taking place. So a lot of people who deal with the transatlantic slave trade don't know that we were here tens of thousands of years before Native Americans even came into existence. So so these are some of the things I deal with in the online course that I teach: the ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. So the way I deal with it, you'll never look at the transatlantic slave trade the same way, because I also deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors that lead up to Columbus setting sail on his 4 voyages, because Columbus is using nautical instruments that were based upon Moorish technology that the Moors introduced into Europe. Not only did he have Moors navigating some of his ships, his nautical instruments were based upon Moorish technology. So you have to understand a chronology of history. And a people's history teaches them how to deal with the problems of the past in the present and the future to meet their needs and solve their problems. A people's history teaches them how to deal with the problems of the past in the present and the future to meet their needs and solve their problems, because things happen in cycles. Things happen in cycles. So these are some of the things we talked about tonight on the African History Network show. How's everybody doing? This is a questions and answers session. Okay. We'll be here a little while longer. Why not public? Why online, fam? What are you talking about, Jonathan? The radio show is on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation here in Detroit. I was in the studio. You can go back and watch the 4 segments of the show we broadcast on Facebook Live, and then now I'm doing a questions and answers session, because we had a lot of people who called in tonight, and we left at least 4 calls at the end that I couldn't get to, and a lot of people were commenting and asking questions during the broadcast on Facebook, and I'm trying to actually do the show. So I couldn't get to all the questions. Yes, I travel. If you want me to do a presentation for your group or organization, go to my website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can contact me through the website, or email me at info@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We can set it up. You want me to do a presentation for your group or organization. I have about 35 of my lectures on DVD. You can order them from AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. I have some presentations I just put on DVD that I just did between July and last week. So I have a ton of topics. I have a ton of information dealing with history, current events, the Confederate Monuments, history of Confederate Monuments, Three-Fifths Compromise of 1787, history of the Electoral College, history of the Tuskegee experiment of untreated syphilis in a Negro male. I got a ton of stuff. Okay, what's the difference between power and empire, the negativity impact on black people? The difference is that the TV show Empire is on the Fox TV network, which is broadcast television, and the TV show Power is on the Stars network, which is cable. So Empire reaches more people. Empire, I think they have between 13 to 17 million viewers each week. Empire reaches more people, so it's more destructive because it's on broadcast television, which is free, as opposed to cable, which is the Stars network. And they have more celebrities on Empire. They also release the soundtrack for Empire. So what they do is they use music, specifically hip hop music, to draw African Americans in, to feed them a lot of negativity and garbage and show them a grossly dysfunctional family and deal with a lot of violence. And you look at TV shows like Empire and Power, but even Empire on broadcast television, Empire has more vulgar language than the majority of other TV shows on broadcast television. They have more vulgar language, have a lot of violence, promiscuity, drug usage, things like this. Okay. It's a winning combination for a popular African-American TV show. And they show all this and all this criminality and things like this to put you in a certain category, to dehumanize you. So then people will then put policies in place to deal with their perceptions of African-Americans that they see based upon these stereotypes. Only 60 years since public schools have been desegregated, and it goes back to 1954, Brown versus Board of Education, 1954. Would like to get you here in Colorado. Okay, Jonathan. Yeah, just hit me up on my website or email me info@africanhistorynetwork.com. We can work out the details. But yeah, I'll come to Colorado. Okay, so also when we talked about, the transatlantic slave trade started in 1440. The Portuguese were the first ones involved in the transatlantic slave trade. They dominate for the first 200 years. But the transatlantic slave trade goes from 1440 to 1888. The British were the last ones to formally end the slave trade. So it lasted 448 years nationwide. In the 13 British colonies, it lasted 246 years, from 1619 to 1865. 246 years. Okay. So we dealt with the protests over a statue of Dr. J. Marion Sims. Also, now J. Marion Sims is known as the father of modern gynecology. You have a protest in New York by members of Black Youth Project 100, Black Youth Project 100, which is an activist group founded in 2013. They staged a protest against the statue of J. Marion Sims outside the New York Academy of Medicine on August 19th. They photographed their protest in a now viral Facebook post in which they explain the reason they are calling for the statue's removal. And they said in the Facebook post, quote, J. Marion Sims, M-A-R-I-O-N, M-A-R-I-O-N. J. Marion Sims was a gynecologist in the 1880s who purchased black women slaves and used them as guinea pigs for his untested surgical experiments. He reportedly performed genital surgery on black women without anesthesia because, according to him, black women don't feel pain. Black women don't feel pain. And this was a stereotype. This was a myth that African people had higher pain thresholds or didn't feel pain, or even some believed African people had thicker skins. And this, coupled with them saying that we were savages and didn't have souls, or that we were non-Christian, these were reasons given for enslaving African people. These were reasons for enslaving African people, because they said we were suited to be slaves for these reasons. So then if you look at an article from blackdoctor.org, blackdoctor.org, which deals with a study that came out. So this article is from September of 2016. And this deals with, name of this article is, Are Blacks Undertreated for Pain? Are Blacks Undertreated for Pain? Study reveals alarming racial bias. Are Blacks undertreated for pain? So this article from September 28th, 2016, this deals with how there was a study done, and it found that, we're going to post this here on the thread of the broadcast here on Facebook. In the article, it says, according to a recent study, African Americans are less likely to receive pain medication in the emergency room because many medical students associate race with pain tolerance. Many medical students associate race with pain tolerance. In other words, African Americans are believed to have thicker skin and therefore are routinely undertreated. African Americans are believed to have thicker skin and therefore are routinely undertreated. So there's a history behind this, behind racial stereotypes, which then tie into justifications for enslaving African people. Okay, so there's a history behind this. So check out this article from blackdoctor.org. We talked about that as well. So Mayor Bill de Blasio, mayor of New York City, has called for a 90-day review of any hate symbols, And when we look at the other article, that's a follow-up to this one, but from a different publication, from let me find this article. They're going to put this statue of J. Marion Sims is part of the 90-day review of hate symbols. So they're hoping that this statue is going to be taken down. Okay. There's an article from news.artnet.com, news.artnet.com. Okay. And it's entitled NYC Museum Finally Backs Call to Take Down Harlem Monument to Doctor Who Experimented on Enslaved Women. NYC Museum finally backs call to take down Harlem Monument to Doctor Who Experimented on Enslaved Women. Okay. So that's from August 23rd, 2017. And that was that was 2 days after this article from Huffington Post, Black Voices, Why Black Women Are Protesting a Statue of this Famed Gynecologist. All right. So J. Marion Sims lived from 1813 to 1883. He lived during the 19th century. There never should have been a statue erected for this monster. There never should have been a statue erected for this monster. He was a butcher. Okay. There never should have been a statue erected for him. All right. So how's everybody doing? How you all like this type of information? So if you like this type of information, be sure to register for the online course that I teach, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. This is a 12-hour, 6-week online course that I teach, normally on Friday, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But as soon as you register, you can watch the first 3 sessions, because all the sessions are recorded. Okay. So as soon as you register, you can watch the first 3 sessions. You can watch it anytime. And then we also have about 20 hours of bonus content to watch as well. The course is only $40. So it's going to totally blow you away. If you like this type of information, the online course will blow you away. We also deal with recent archaeological discoveries as well, because that ties right into the history. Okay. All right. So I do have a high pain tolerance. Yeah. Okay. There's history. You have to study history to understand this thing dealing with high pain tolerance. This also deals with why one of the reasons why cocaine was made illegal. Because cocaine was legal, but in the early 1900s, we have African American men, black men, working on the docks, right? Especially in the South. Then you have white people fear what happens when these black men are high on cocaine. Will they rape white women? Do we need do police need to carry a 45 caliber handgun to kill a Negro high on cocaine because a 38 is not powerful enough? So you have to understand history to understand all of this. That's why cocaine was made illegal. Cocaine was legal up until the early 1900s. When you study the history of drug laws in this country, it's not because of the drug itself or side effects of the drug. That's not why it was made illegal. The reason why it was made illegal is because of who was using the drug. As long as white people were using opium, opium was fine. But the first anti-opium laws go back to 1875 because of Chinese men using opium. And will they seduce white women when these Chinese men use opium? Or will they try to rape white women? Okay, this goes to California. In 1875, the anti-opium laws. Marijuana was legal in this country until about 1937. Because the concept of recreational use of marijuana was introduced by Mexicans coming to this country in the early 1900s. And marijuana became associated with Negroes, jazz singers, Filipinos, and Mexicans. As long as white people were using cannabis or hemp, it was all right. And they would use it for medicinal purposes. Okay, it was also grown as a crop. They would make products from it, things like this. But when people of color, when it became associated with people of color, now there's a problem because Harry J. Anslinger, who was the chair of the National Narcotics Commission, he was the first director of the National Narcotics Commission. He testified in front of the U.S. Congress in 1937 that white women craved black men sexually when they were high on marijuana, because this was a rumor at the time that white women craved black men sexually when they were high on marijuana. Research Harry J. Anslinger, Anslinger. I think it's A-N or A-N-N. Harry J. Anslinger. This is history. So when I hear people debating on radio or TV shows whether marijuana should be legalized or not, my first question is we need to deal with the history of why it was made illegal in the first place, because marijuana was legal. It wasn't about it causing brain damage or anything like that. No, it was about who was using the drug. As long as white people were using the drug, it was fine. So when you study the history of drug laws, this is what you find. Because I've studied the history of many of these drug laws. This is what you find. So we talked about J. Marion Sims. We talked about Dick Gregory. We deal with all this. Ariel said article appeared in the New York Times on August 17, 2007 on J. Marion Sims entitled Antebellum Hero, but to whom? Yeah, that's true. That's true about J. Marion Sims. Yeah, that's true. The article from the New York Times. I know because I saw it. This article right here. I know I saw it. I read all this stuff. New York Times, an antebellum hero, but to whom? August 18th, 2017. That's when it came out, August 18th, Donald Gonzalez. Yeah, so I know. I read all this stuff. I have a subscription to New York Times, Washington Post, Baltimore Sun. So, yep. All right. Now, I also talked about how there are you have over 129,000 school children in this country that attend schools that honor Confederate leaders. You have over 129,000 school children that attend schools in the U.S. that honor Confederate leaders. They're disproportionately Hispanic and African American children. You have at least 191 schools around the country named after Confederate leaders who fought to uphold slavery. This is from Huffington Post Black Voices. It's from Huffington Post Black Voices, August 17, 2017. So this whole thing is spreading beyond just some statues. Statues are symbols that teach ideologies and cause people to coalesce around ideologies. Okay. But this is spreading to deal with the names of schools, to deal with the impact that white supremacy has on non-European people, but also on Europeans as well. And then this conversation is spreading to understanding that the curriculum has to be corrected. The curriculum has to be corrected because we see the insensitivity and the ignorance that is bred when people are ignorant of history. So a lot of these white people running around talking about save these monuments don't even know that General Robert E. Lee, who they claim as a hero, they don't even know he was against Confederate monuments. He said at the end of the Civil War that Confederate battle flag should be folded up and put in attics and not brought back out, because he said it was the flag of the traitors. It was a flag of a treasonous country, the Confederate States of America, CSA, Confederate States of America. And to show you how a lot of these white people who are waving this Confederate flag, what they think is the Confederate flag, that's not even the Confederate flag. That's the Confederate battle flag of Northern Virginia under General Robert E. Lee's army. That's not even the Confederate flag. And then you had some smaller armies that had that flag, a few of them. But that flag was most notably the Confederate battle flag of General Robert E. Lee's army. So the flag that's on the General Lee car, on the Dukes of Hazzard, General Lee, here you have a TV show. We didn't know when we were children, when we were running around pretending to be Bo and Luke Duke, right? Here you have a TV show. And one of the main attractions of the TV show was a car named after a white supremacist Confederate general who owned slaves and fought to uphold slavery. General Lee, that's who the car is named after, General Robert E. Lee. So the flag on the top of the car is not the Confederate flag, it's the Confederate battle flag. Because there were 3 flags that flew over the Confederate States of America, CSA, from 1861 to 1865. That flag was never one of them. That flag that's on top of the General Lee, that flag never flew over the Confederate States of America. So a Huffington Post analysis has found that at least 191 kindergarten through 12th grade public schools in the U.S. are named after Confederate soldiers, Confederate leaders, or politicians. At least 191 K through 12 public schools are named after Confederate soldiers, leaders, or politicians. Okay. We're going to post a link again to the online course that I teach, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. So when I do the course, I'm using a technology that allows me to talk. You can see me, and I do a PowerPoint presentation. We show video clips. I have reference website, so it's visual, okay? Because I'm doing a PowerPoint presentation, slide presentation. So it's visual. So it's a lot of information. We have book references. It's about 6 books that we use in the course as reference. You don't have to buy any of the books, anything like that, but it's reference because I cite my sources. So this number of 191 K through 12 public schools is slightly down from recent years. In 2015, the Huffington Post analysis found that the number at that time was at least 195. And the original analysis was conducted behind the killing, the white supremacist killing at Mother Emanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in South Carolina. Okay, Dylan Roth in June of 2015. Okay, so you can check out this article also. Over 129,000 kids attend schools that honor Confederate leaders. Huffington Post Black Voices. What are they being taught? Over 129,000 kids attend schools that honor Confederate leaders. This is from Huffington Post Black Voices. So we talked about fat as well tonight. And then we dealt with, I also talked about how August 22nd. August 22nd was the beginning of the Haitian Revolution, 1791. Anniversary of the beginning of the Haitian Revolution, 1791. August 22nd, August 23rd. And August 22nd is also known as the International Day for the Remembrance of the Slave Trade and its Abolition. International Day of Remembrance of the Slave Trade and its Abolition. So we know August 21st, this past Tuesday, was the solar eclipse, right? What a lot of people didn't know was August 21st was also the anniversary of the start of the Nat Turner Rebellion of 1831 in Southampton County, Virginia. And a solar eclipse was one of the signs that Nat Turner took as a sign to start his rebellion. There were 2 solar eclipses that he saw as signs. So this past Tuesday, where a lot of African Americans were watching the solar eclipse, which deals with astronomy and reconnecting ourselves to ourselves, because it was African people who created astronomy. A lot of us didn't know that August 21st was the anniversary of the beginning of the Nat Turner Rebellion of 1831, which was the largest, most successful slave rebellion in the history of this country. And then August 22nd, the next day, was the International Day for Remembrance of the Slave Trade and its Abolition. This day has been recognized annually since 1998, marking the start of the Haitian Revolution, Haitian Rebellion, or Haitian Revolution as it's normally called. And you had African men and women who revolted against being sold into slavery and helped push along an end to the cruel transatlantic slave trade. So what publication is that? BlackAmericaWeb.com. BlackAmericaWeb.com has an article about this. Little known Black history fact. We'll post the article here on the thread. Little known Black history fact. This was on the Tom Joyner Morning Show. International Day of Remembrance. Between August 22nd and August 23rd in 1791, the slaves gathered in revolt against the French colonizers in Saint Dominique, also Santo Domingo, which today is known as Haiti. The revolution wasn't without casualties, as 200,000 Haitians perished in comparison to 75,000 French troops and 25,000 white colonists. Around 45,000 British troops were also killed, because the Haitians not only defeated the French, but they also defeated the Spanish and the British, who were allies of the French. You had approximately 45,000 British troops that were killed by the Haitians. The clashes raged on until the country ousted France occupation in 1801. So January 1st, 1801, Haiti declares its independence. Was the Second Amendment before or after the Nat Turner Rebellion? That was before the Nat Turner Rebellion. Nat Turner Rebellion was 1831. Bill of Rights is 1791, if I remember correctly. That was the Second Amendment is before the Nat Turner Rebellion. Okay, so UNESCO began the day to commemorate the start of the Haitian Revolution, which called to global attention the horrors of the transatlantic slave trade and the great cost of life as a result of its practice. The Day of Remembrance first took place in Haiti, then was recognized the following year in Senegal, which is in West Africa. In several nations around the globe, the day is marked by gatherings and related events to the uprising and the abolishing of the transatlantic slave trade. So that's a little known history fact. So you have the Haitian Revolution, which we really need to study. And Tariq Nasheed has a documentary coming out later this year called 1804, which is going to be fantastic. I've seen a preview of it. A lot of people are going to learn a lot from that documentary. I'm telling you. Okay, so we talked about that tonight's show as well. A little bit about that. And what else did we get to? All right, so that's what we dealt with. We'll be here a couple more minutes. How you all like this type of information? Post any questions you have. I'm trying to get to them before I get out of here. Keith Smith said you need an app that cross-reference scholastic texts in the modern era, the way kids can get this knowledge easy. All right. They can also go to our website. They can follow us here on Facebook, the African History Network as well. We have videos here. Our podcasts of our shows are also on iTunes. Our iTunes page is the African History Network Show, the African History Network Show. But it's also on podcasts are also on Blog Talk Radio, our Blog Talk Radio channel, the African History Network Show. If they go to AfricanHistoryNetwork.com and they connect them to everything. All right. So let me see. Let me just look at this. Okay, so J. Marion Sims, International Day of Remembrance of the Transatlantic Slave Trade. We dealt with all that. Next couple of days, we'll upload the podcast of the full show. What I want to do, I know there are people who try to call in and things like that. I only have 2 hours for the show, so couldn't get to it. Then you have, let's see. We know in Michigan, there's an effort, in the state legislature in Michigan, there's a bill by Representative Sherry Gay Dagnago to teach African and African American history. There's Democrats in the Michigan House of Representatives are pushing for legislation requiring African American history to be taught in all public schools, saying education is key to eliminating racism. Education is key to eliminating racism, which is true. Representative Sherry Gay Dagnago, who I know, Democrat from Detroit, she said it starts in our schools and educating children properly so they're able to push back when they hear lies, push forward about different races of people. She's absolutely correct when it comes to that. It's an article from mlive.com. M is in Michigan. mlive.com, Live. House Democrats push African American history mandate following Charlottesville, Virginia violence. House Democrats push African American history mandate following Charlottesville violence. So check out that article as well. And African and African American history needs to be taught in every school across the country. Every school across the country, not just schools with a majority African American population, but every school across the country. All right, so you have the debates now, and we know Donald Trump compared George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, who were presidents and slave owners, to General Robert E. Lee and Jefferson Davis, things like this. But the main difference is that Washington and Jefferson are not being honored because they were slave owners, but despite the fact that they were slave owners. They were presidents of the United States. You know, Jefferson largely wrote the U.S. Constitution and partly wrote the Declaration of Independence. We know Washington was the first president under the U.S. Constitution, and also fought in the American Revolutionary War. I'm not fans of either Jefferson or Washington, but they're not being honored because they were slave owners. Whereas Confederate generals and Confederate officers like P.G.T. Beauregard or Jefferson Davis or General Robert E. Lee, they're solely being honored because they fought in the Civil War on behalf of the South, took up arms against the Union, and fought to keep slavery in existence. And many of them were slave owners also. But when you look at them, they picked up arms against the U.S., committed a treasonous act. There's a difference. So we talked about that some as well. Now, I'm not fans of any of them, but there is a big difference there. But all those monuments need to be put into a museum. But they need to be taken down because they were erected to inflict terror upon African Americans and remind us of our place in life. Because when you look at when the majority of them were erected, first big phase, 1895 to 1915, you see a huge spike in the number of Confederate monuments being put up. And this is right, 1895 is right before Plessy versus Ferguson, which instituted separate but equal. And then you're going to have a huge wave of terrorism against African Americans that explodes. You have a period of time our rights being eroded and being rolled back. You have a huge increase in the number of lynchings that are going to take place during this period of time. And you have the resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan in 1915 because of the movie The Birth of a Nation, which is then going to yield a lot of terror against African Americans as well. And then you have another increase in these monuments being put up from 1955 to 1970 during the Civil Rights Movement as well, put up in opposition to African Americans trying to gain equal rights. So these were white supremacist terrorist symbols. These were not put up to teach history for the most part, things like this. And most of them were not erected right after the Civil War ends or anything like this. All right, so Carol said it's 1 a.m. in St. Louis. All right. So look, we got to get out of here. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We have a lot of information there at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can also order all of my DVD presentations. So if you like this type of information, you want to support the African History Network, you can order our DVDs. That helps us stay on the air, keep doing the research. There's a lot of work. You see what time it is. We want to do Q&A session because we had a lot of people call into the show tonight and couldn't get to all the callers. And when I do the show on 9:10 a.m., a lot of times I can't keep up with a lot of the comments coming through because I'm actually, engrossed in the show. I'm reading and dealing with the content, etc. All right. So, and then also you can donate to the African History Network at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Click on the yellow donate button right on the home page of the website as well. All right. Okay. So look, we're going to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring African people throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behavior. Also, the Black Friday documentary, we have this at our website as well, because I'm in the Black Friday documentary. The Elementary Genocide Part 3 is at our website. We have it. You can buy the DVD by itself, the documentary by itself. We also have the bundle pack. You get all 3 installments. Elementary Genocide Part 3, Academic Holocaust, just came out this past week. So I'm in that documentary. We're going to post the info here also. All right. Okay, so Michael Imhotep founded the African History Network. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's correct wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So remember, right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. We'll talk to you next time. Peace.